What if I told you that during World War II, the US Navy made a battleship disappear, and in the process accidentally teleported it, fusing its crew into the steel walls and driving the survivors completely insane? This is the legend of the Philadelphia experiment, a story so terrifying it's been haunting the military for nearly a century. So let's get right to it. The year is 1943. The world is at war, and deep inside a Philadelphia shipyard, the US Navy is supposedly working on the ultimate secret weapon. We're not talking about a bigger gun or a faster plane. We're talking about invisibility. The story goes that they didn't just hide a ship, they literally made it vanish, teleporting it hundreds of miles in an instant. But when it reappeared, the crew had paid a price beyond anyone's worst nightmare. And this is the ship at the heart of it all, the USS Eldridge. Now this was a real destroyer escort with a real service record. But according to the legend, on one fateful day in October 1943, it stopped being just a ship. It became a laboratory for an experiment that supposedly ripped a hole in the fabric of reality itself. And the stories of what happened to the men on board, they are pure nightmare fuel. This wasn't a clean teleportation. We're talking about crew members physically fused into the steel of the ship's deck. Others would just flicker in and out of existence, becoming invisible at random. Some went, and I'm quoting here, stark, raving, gibbering mad. And in the most bizarre claim, 2 sailors supposedly burst into flames and burned for 18 straight days. So you have to ask, where does a story this absolutely insane even come from? Well, that's what we're going to find out. We're going to trace this whole legend right from the start, from a strange letter sent to a UFO author to a bizarre investigation by the Navy itself. And then we'll see how it all stacks up against the official documents. Alright, first up, let's look at the experiment itself. The story goes that this was a top-secret military test that didn't just fail, it went catastrophically, horrifically wrong. The project was supposedly codenamed Project Rainbow, and its goal was something straight out of science fiction: make an entire warship invisible to enemy radar and eyes. And the science they were supposedly using? None other than Albert Einstein's unified field theory, basically the holy grail of physics that tries to connect gravity and electromagnetism. The thing is, the theory was incomplete, but the legend says the Navy had secretly figured it out. But where did this all begin? It all traces back to one guy, a mysterious man who called himself Carlos Allende. He claimed he saw the whole thing happen, but here's the really weird part. He didn't say a word about it for over a decade. Then suddenly, in 1955, he sends a letter with this exact quote, lighting the fuse on a conspiracy theory that is still going strong today. Now we get to the origin of the story, and this is where things take a sharp turn into the truly bizarre. This bombshell claim about the Eldridge didn't come from a government insider or a declassified document. Nope, it just appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, in the mailbox of a UFO author. Just check out this timeline. The experiment supposedly happens in 43. And then, crickets. 12 years of complete and total silence. Then, in 1955, an author named Morris K. Jessup publishes a book about UFOs. Right after, he starts getting these weird letters from Carlos Allende, describing the experiment in vivid detail. That one letter is the spark that lights this whole fire. Now, Allende didn't just tell a story, he claimed he was an eyewitness. He said he was on a merchant ship, the SS Andrew Forsyth, and he watched as the USS Eldridge was surrounded by a strange greenish fog, disappeared, and then reappeared with its terrified, damaged crew. Now, remember the name of that merchant ship, the Andrew Forsyth. It's going to become very important later on. Okay, so far it's just one guy's strange story in a letter. Big deal, right? But then, something happens that launches this thing into the stratosphere of conspiracy theories. The story ends up on the one desk you would never, ever expect, the United States Navy's. Get this, a simple paperback copy of Jessup's UFO book shows up anonymously at the Office of Naval Research. But this copy is different. Every single page is filled with handwritten notes, scribbled in 3 different colors of ink, almost like 3 people were having a secret conversation right there on the margins of the book. And the notes themselves were completely wild. They talked about a war between 2 alien species, the peaceful M's and the evil M's. They mentioned things like force fields, motherships, and secret cities under the ocean. But most importantly, these mystery writers seem to know all about the Philadelphia experiment, confirming what Allende had written and even adding new crazy details. So what does the Navy do with this bizarre, alien-obsessed book? They don't throw it out. In fact, 2 officers got so interested that they had a military contractor retype the entire book, including all the crazy notes, and print a small batch of copies. For conspiracy theorists, this was the smoking gun. Why would the US Navy go to all that trouble if the story wasn't true? Okay, so that's the legend. An eyewitness, a book filled with alien secrets and a secret Navy printing. It sounds pretty convincing, right? But now it's time to switch gears and look at the one thing that can't be spun, the one thing that doesn't lie, the official historical record. You see, every single day of a Navy ship's life is recorded in its official ship's log. It's a legal document. It tracks every port, every movement, every single day. It is the ultimate source of truth. And when investigators finally pulled the log for the USS Eldridge from the National Archives, the entire legend just started to fall apart. Let's just look at the facts. The legend says the experiment happened in Philadelphia in October 1943. The ship's log says the Eldridge was in New York Harbor. Before that, in August and September, it was doing sea trials down in Bermuda. And the next month, when it supposedly teleported to Norfolk, it was actually in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, on its way to Casablanca. The records are crystal clear. So, the conclusion here is undeniable. According to its own legally binding documents, the USS Eldridge was never even in Philadelphia when the experiment was supposed to have taken place. The main character of the story never even showed up to the set. But what about our eyewitness Carlos Allende on the SS Andrew Furuseth? Well, investigators pulled that ship's log too. And here it is, the final nail in the coffin. The logs prove that the Andrew Furuseth and the Eldridge were never in the same port at the same time. Allende couldn't have seen it happen because he just wasn't there. So if the ship wasn't there and the eyewitness couldn't have seen it, what actually happened? How does a story this specific get started from nothing? Well, it turns out the truth might be rooted in a different kind of secret experiment, one that was very real and very easy to misunderstand. It's a procedure called degaussing. During World War II, the Germans had these nasty magnetic mines that would blow up when a giant steel ship passed over them. So to fight this, the Navy wrapped its ships in giant electrical cables. When they ran a current through them, it scrambled the ship's magnetic signature, making it invisible to the mines. You can see how a sailor, seeing a ship covered in weird cables and hearing whispers about making it invisible, could get the wrong idea. So let's just break it down side by side. The myth says invisibility and teleportation. The reality was degaussing, making ships invisible to magnetic mines. The myth talks about Einstein's French theories. The reality was real practical experiments with things like optical camouflage and generators that might have created a strange green glow. And the terrifying effects on the crew? Veterans from the Eldridge held reunions for decades, and they all said the same thing. Nothing like that ever happened. It was just another routine day at sea. So, the evidence is pretty overwhelming. The Philadelphia experiment, at least the way the legend tells it, never happened. But that brings us to the biggest and maybe the most interesting question of all. If we know it's fake, why is the story still so popular? Because the real story of the USS Eldridge isn't a horror story, it's a story of quiet duty. The ship wasn't hidden away or destroyed in some secret hangar. It served honorably through the rest of the war. It was later transferred to the Greek Navy, where it served all the way into the 1990s. This supposedly cursed, reality-bending ship had a long, normal, and respectable life, the complete opposite of its terrifying legend. And that really is what this all comes down to. The Philadelphia experiment proves that a great story, one that's packed with secret science, government conspiracies, and human tragedy, can sometimes feel more real, more powerful than the simple truth. It shows us that sometimes we don't want the boring explanation, we want the epic mystery. And so it leaves us with one last question to think about. In the end, what's more powerful? A dusty fact buried in an archive, or a story that's just too good to be true?